All right, here's something else that's fun we can do in QGIS with our project. So I've already loaded in our Lights Out University of Maryland points. So those are these points. And the layer we recently created of the agricultural fields around our campus, and then the primary and secondary roads that we had clipped out by our boundary of the University of Maryland. So let's say we're interested in measuring the distance between each of these sightings and the closest agricultural field, or each of these sightings and the closest road. So we can have QGIS do that for us nicely. So let's pull up our processing toolbox and let's start typing in proximity. And remember, these are all vectors. We converted that NLCD layer over to a vector previously, and then we reclassified it as zeros and ones being our agricultural fields, and then we kept just those ones and created our own layer with that. So now if we want to measure the distance, we go to proximity, we go to join attribute by nearest. We'll double click on that. And for the layer, we want to go from the Lights Out University of Maryland, those points. We want to measure the distance from those points to NLCD ag only. We're going to leave all this as is. We're not going to change the maximum distance or minimum. We're going to save it as a new folder within ENST 456. Let's call it distances. Let's call it dist underscore LOUMD underscore ag. And hit save, hit run, and it's going to quickly pull up the results in this new layer. So let's right click on that layer and open the attribute table. So here it tells us all those points from the lights out, and then it adds in these new columns afterwards. So after species, everything to the right of that is new. So it's telling us between the point and the closest agricultural field, what its X and Y location are and the distance between. So let's take a look at that. Let's test this out by going to the identify tool. Let's say we want to identify this spot right here. And let me move myself a little more so we can see our results. Okay, so let's say we're going to pick this. Let's go to our measure tool and measure the line between this point and our closest agriculture field. So we're seeing around 151 meters. And I'm right clicking to stop the measurement. And let's look down here. So this is a snapshot of the attribute table if we were to just highlight that one point. And it's seeing 136, which is approximately what I saw as well. I'm not nearly as accurate as QGIS is. So basically, this entire attribute table is taking all of those locations and measuring to the closest ag field and reporting in meters, because that's what we wanted. We had already projected everything into UTMs because we want to stick with meters as our measurement. So now let's say we want to measure the distance between each point from lights out and the closest road. So same thing, we typed in proximity, join attributes by nearest. We put in our input layer as the lights out. And we're going to input to the roads layer we created previously. We clipped the primary and secondary roads to the University of Maryland boundary, and we had projected that into UTMs, and we clipped that. So now we would measure the distance. And again, we're keeping that in meters. We're going to save this. Within that distances folder that we created, we're going to call this dist underscore LOUMD underscore roads. And save and run. Okay, so same thing. This next result makes a new layer and we can look at the attribute table and we see between each point what the closest road was and the distance in meters. So this is very helpful, especially if we want to run statistics within each of those fields to see, mean, standard deviation or standard error, things like that between each of these points. However, we ran each of these individually and we have all these different attribute tables. Let's say we want it all in one attribute table. So that is joining the fields